From JBS Studios in Greater New York, this is the JBS News Update with Teisha Bader.
I'm Teisha Bader with the JBS News Update for Thursday, September the 10th, 2020. The Israel Institute for Biological Research said it will begin human trials of its potential coronavirus vaccine next month. The governmental research lab concluded animal testing successfully and will begin human testing at Sheba and Hadassah medical centers with about 100 volunteers. If successful, the trials will then expand to hundreds of volunteers. The number of coronavirus cases in Israel continues to climb, with cabinet ministers set to debate on further restrictions and possible lockdowns for the approaching high holidays. And staying with Sheba, Reuters reports that the medical center in Tel HaShomer near Tel Aviv signed a memorandum of understanding with the United Arab Emirates Apex National Investment today to jointly promote healthcare technologies in the Emirates and the Gulf region, and will create an innovation hub in the Gulf to collaborate on medical innovation, professional training, COVID-19 treatment, and medical tourism. Sheba Director General Yitzhak Kreis said, "We believe that the agreement between Apex National Investment and Sheba will change the dynamics of healthcare and innovation in the UAE and act as a harbinger of peace and prosperity in the Gulf region and beyond, where hope knows no boundaries." The Times of Israel reports that senior White House advisor Jared Kushner gave a phone briefing to reporters yesterday ahead of the signing next week of the Abraham Accord in Washington, the normalization of ties between Israel and the UAE announced last month. The Times of Israel's U.S. correspondent Jacob Magid was on the call, and he quotes Kushner responding to questions about the U.S. peace plan for Israel and the Palestinians, saying what we did with our plan was we were trying to save the two-state solution because if we kept going with the status quo, ultimately Israel would have eaten up all the land in the West Bank. Kushner also stressed that the Palestinians needed to come to the negotiating table and that the U.S. would not chase them. Israel said it will begin offering direct flights from Tel Aviv to Abu Dhabi as soon as it receives final approval from the Israeli and Emirati authorities. The flights, which will take 3.5 hours and cost $300 each way, if all goes well, will begin in a matter of weeks. Jewish screenwriter, author, and playwright Ronald Harwood has died. Born Ronald Horowitz in South Africa, Harwood moved to the UK at 17. His most well-known play was The Dresser, for which he also wrote the screenplay, which was nominated for an Academy Award. His screenplay for The Diving Bell and The Butterfly was also nominated for an Oscar, and Harwood won an Oscar in 2003 for the screenplay for The Pianist. Harwood died Tuesday in England. He was 85. Well, Deadline Hollywood reports that a feature film about the life of a Holocaust hero is in the works. Nicholas Winton, also referred to as the British Schindler, saved 669 children from the Nazis during the Holocaust, though he never really spoke about his heroic acts, which were discovered much later in his life by his wife, and he was reunited with some of those children that he saved. Winton died in 2015 at the age of 106. Well, now his story will be immortalized with One Life, a feature film starring Anthony Hopkins in the lead role. Deadline cites producers Ian Canning and Emil Sherman saying that despite never wanting any attention for his altruistic act, Nicky's story and the story of those he saved must be told. To be a part of sharing this moment in history with the world is an extraordinary privilege. Taking a look now at our programming for tonight, for Thursday, September the 10th, which includes some special programming in honor of the 9/11 anniversary tomorrow. At 8 o'clock on Faith to Faith, Deborah Burlingame, sister of Charles Burlingame, the pilot of American Airlines Flight 77, discusses the tragedy with Rabbi Joseph Potasnik. At 8:30, author Michelle Hamoff talks about her first novel, which tells the story of recent college graduates finding themselves in the chaos of New York City following 9/11. At 9, Mark Golub sits down with a survivor of One World Trade Center, Ari Schonbrun, and with NYPD Detective Morty Jacansky and Liz Gorin, a psychotherapist who counsels survivors. They tell their personal stories and reflect upon the meaning of 9/11 as Americans and as Jews. In other programming tonight at 10 o'clock, food critic and culinary journalist and TV personality Gil Chovav speaks. And coming up next, it's ILTV's Insider, followed by Talmud Study at 7. And that's the JBS News Update for Thursday, September the 10th, 2020. I'm Teisha Bader. Stay healthy. Stay well.